To every mother who wakes her children with a kiss and sleeps peacefully to the sound of their laughter. To every mother who packs a school bag or waits by the window for her child's return, I write to you from a place that no longer resembles life.
Good day, everyone. My name is Michael Spath, and I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana Center for Middle East Peace in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We're a voice of conscience for peace, justice, human rights, and intercultural encounter. We're also delighted today to welcome the United Church of Christ Movement for Palestinian Solidarity as co-hosts of our program today. I just want to say how personally glad I am to be welcoming our dear friend, my dear friend, Pastor Loren McGrail, today. Loren is a United Church of Christ minister who served in Palestine Israel for 5 years as a mission co-worker for the global ministries of the United Church of Christ and Christian Church Disciples of Christ. She served with the YWCA of Palestine in Jerusalem, where she worked on an advocacy project calling for the right of return. It was called The Fabric of Our Lives, which lifted up the stories of women in the Y's refugee camps who could remember 1948. She was also on the steering committee of the UCC Palestinian Solidarity Movement from 2018 to 2024. Loren is an artist, writer, poet, theologian, seeking God in the margins with the oppressed. Her latest work, Compassionate Witness, Our Responsibility to Destruction and Erasure, Poems and Art, will be on exhibit at the Belfast Library Gallery in November. It focuses on climate collapse and the genocide in Gaza. Today she'll be sharing with us her current work, Gaza, Out of the Ruins, Love in a Time of War. It's a visual and poetic witness to the violence and destruction of a people and their land through the eyes of Gaza's poets and artists. Loren and her artist and poet friends in Gaza are not only witnesses in the sense of eyewitnesses to Israel's genocidal ethnic cleansing project. Almost 2 years now in just a few days, right? 2 years of genocide while the world stands silent. But they are bearing witness. 680,000 so far, 380,000 of them children, dead, literally bearing witness. The Greek word for witness is martyr. Pastor Munther Isaac of Ramallah reminds us that good intentions and prayers aren't enough. What's needed is costly solidarity. So our prayer today, we at Indiana Center for Middle East Peace and UCC Palestinian Solidarity Movement, our prayer is that the art and poetry shared today by Loren and her friends in Gaza will inspire such costly solidarity among us.
Out of the Ruins, Love in a Time of War. The title for this presentation comes from one of the Gazan artists, Basil, a friend of mine that I've been in contact with and speaking with, not only throughout this time, but even during the time that I lived in Palestine. And it reminds us that though we here in the West often focus on the genocide and the deep suffering, the artists want us to remember that love still has survived and continues in Gaza and in Palestine itself. This is a collage of mine that shows a young man who was brought back after trying to go and get flour for his family, instead was shot. And so he is on the Gaza beach, and that sunrise that I've been painting here in Maine is also the sun also rises in Gaza. Things did not start on October 7th. The picture says there was 1948, but I want to take us back even before that to the British Mandate era, when the Balfour Declaration was declared in 1917, declaring its aim to establish a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. For many, this declaration set a whole motion of a variety of actions that led to the colonization of Palestine and the removal of the Palestinian people that culminated in 1948. And over 750,000 Palestinians were removed from their homes and displaced and never allowed to return. During my time living there, I worked with the YWCA of Palestine, and one of my projects was to interview women in the refugee camps who could remember 1948 and what happened to them. And after a series of interviews, I realized it was really one question only. What happened that day when you were forced from your home? And while I was working on that project, I used to go to the Arab 48 beach, which is a small beach between Tel Aviv and Jaffa. And it's where the Arab who live within Israel and sometimes those who could escape from the West Bank used to go. And they would throw into the water there these small pieces of the floors from the old homes. And I realized that these tiles all had stories of the people that lived there. This is the poem that I wrote, All That Remains, for Palestinians forced from their homes in Jaffa. So much depends upon these broken floor tiles, smashed against the rocks, geometric patterns of brown and black, green and mustard, splashes of red and baby blue. One has a heart. Like a cross between an archaeologist and a bag lady, I scour the beach, collecting them, throwing away the ones too big to carry, too worn. Like a talisman, each tells a story of lives lived in salons or kitchens, bedrooms or baths, making love and iftar dinners, praying, and children tickling each other. Like a key to a door they would rather keep locked or covered up in a dumpster of made up history of what never happened. A people living their lives by this majestic blue, green, gray sea, eating warm taboon bread with olive oil and fresh labneh, oranges from your grove. These thick sea-washed tiles are all that remains of lives I will never know, but whose stories I must imagine and make beautiful again. These images are from the project, The Fabric of Our Lives. On the left is some photos of me working with the women that I interviewed. And the red thread comes from the embroidery that the women embroider on their dresses for special occasions. It's also the thread of resistance, because even in times of great turmoil and grief and sadness, the women bravely put on their dresses with their red thread. In the picture above is Sama from Gaza and myself. And Sama was, still is, a leader working with women, although her refugee camp is completely decimated and her family are now living in tents. She introduced me to her grandmother, Zaina, who is the image down below, after each interview we would create an olive wood doll, and the doll was wearing the patterns, the dresses of their original home place. So Gaza was a place of refugees, always, many. And Zaina is wearing a Bedouin dress with beautiful colors. She did not come from Jaffa, she came from the desert. These are images that I took when I went in and out of Gaza for the 5 years I lived there. And sad to say, none of them exist anymore. I'm sure the sign has been bombed. And that is the Gaza port of what it used to look like before it was bombed. It's a beautiful port with a mosque right on the sea. These are children in Rafah, and they are playing a game. The game is to help them remember that they're all interconnected. And so when the bombs fall, they have exercises that they would do together of how they would help each other. And so I imagine that both the school where these children used to come and perhaps the children themselves are no longer here. One of the things that happened in 2014 during another Gaza offensive was the bombing of children. And this image here shows children throughout the Middle East, including Gaza. The little baby on the left is baby Shema. And while I lived there, I had a kind of code for myself that if I've lost the ability to feel, I should go home. And if I normalized the violence that I saw. So this poem represents a turning point for me because it was the first time that I allowed myself to completely feel the tragedy of what was happening. It's called I Allowed Myself. I can live on bread alone, fragments of hope, tea lights in a dark cave. Baby Shema, born from her dead mother, was my miracle baby. She was my sign that death doesn't win, that resurrection is still possible. So when she died in her state-of-the-art donated incubator, because her oxygen was cut off, because they bombed the last power plant, I lost it. I let my faith go like a kite without a string. I let myself sink into a heap of blown up body parts of children, sisters, mothers, brothers, fathers, uncles, aunts. I couldn't breathe. I allowed myself to sob, rock and keen, to become her mother. I allowed myself to curse and finally to sing her a lullaby while I pulled out her tubes so I could hug her one more time. I allowed myself to touch the horror of it all. In 2018 to 2019, the Gazans marched to the border, and they were marching for the right of return, which was guaranteed in the UN Resolution 194, to be able to return to your homes as soon as possible. No Gazans, no Palestinians have ever been able to return to their homes. They bravely went to the border. As you can see from the image, they were shot at by snipers, and many were maimed or died at that border in their non-violent, peaceful resistance to the occupation and to the siege. Heba Zagut was killed with her 2 sons in an airstrike in 2023. She was one of the first artists to be targeted. And you can see the painting behind her. This is Jaffa, remembering that the Palestinians who were mostly coming from the Jaffa region, who were in the refugee camps in Gaza. This is a poem by one of the most famous Palestinian Gazan poets, Dr. Rifat Alir, and he was killed in an airstrike on December 9th, 2023.
If I must die, you must live.
I don't hear
To
you.
tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad, who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment of an angel being there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
After his death, there were demonstrations throughout the world holding the white kites in remembrance of him. I could not write or paint or do anything for quite some time after October 7th. And finally, I had a breakthrough. And it was again back to how to be in the horror of what was happening. Be in the horror of your soul's severance from your heart. Be in the horror. Write the name of the children on your face. You will note in this image the cactus that is blooming. When you Palestinians have a number of symbols to show their resistance, and one of them is the cacti, because the cacti, no matter how much you want to get rid of it or cut it down, it always returns. I decided not only should it return, but it should blossom as well. Basil al-Makusi is one of my Palestinian artists who, through both his art and his written word, have really helped me to understand what the Gazan people are going through. And so we're going to hear him speak about his art early on in a video, and then Todd is going to follow with some of the words that he asked me to share with you.
أول إشي أنا باسل المقبوسي، فنان تشكيلي فلسطيني عايش بغزة. من بداية الحدث كان هو يوم إجازتي بالشغل، وكطبيعي بصحى الصبح بعمل قهوتي فبدأت بدي أقعد بالبرندة أشرب قهوتي. بدأت الدنيا تطفي قطعت الكهرباء. بدأت حرب كانت الأبشع والأشرس. وجود بيتي في منطقة بيت لاهيا القريبة من حدود الأراضي المحتلة عام 48 كان القصف فيها بشكل مش طبيعي. خلانا أنا وأسرتي نطلع من البيت بشكل سريع، ما أخذناش معنا ولا أي إشي من مستلزمات البيت. تركنا كل أغراضنا بما فيهم لوحاتي اللي موجودة بالبيت، كمبيوتري، كاميرتي، في كان معي هاردات كمان اللي هاي مخزن عليها لوحاتي وصوري من 30 سنة. يعني من غزة اللي هو بيتنا لمكان تاني بالشيخ رضوان، لمكان ثالث بالمنطقة الرمال، لمكان رابع في خان يونس، لمكان خامس في خان يونس نفسها في في مدرسة بعدين اللي هو وصلنا لعند رفح، وتقريبا صار لي تقريبا شهرين ونص أو 3 شهور برفح بالخيمة. أنا قررت نفسي لحتى الآن ما فيش خيار بعد هيك، يعني مش حيكون في خيار إن أنا أنزح زي ما بفكر الاحتلال في تهجيرنا لسيناء. صرنا عبارة عن شظايا مبعترة في أكثر من مكان، يعني أنا وأسرتي صار كل واحد في مكان. الصاروخ لما بنزل على البيت بفتفت البيت وبخليه عبارة عن شظايا. في لحظة ما أجى في بالي اللي هي فكرة الشظايا. هذا الموضوع شغل تفكيري يعني في البداية. حاولت إنه أنا أرسم يعني بالألوان، حسيت حالي إنه بعيد، لقيت نفسي أكثر قريب من الفحم ومن استخدام اللون الأسود، لأنه طبيعة الوضع اللي احنا بنعيش فيه كلهيته الغيوم ملبدة بالسواد ودخان القذائف ودخان البيوت اللي عمالها بتنقصف. بداية أنا كنت براقب حركة الأطفال بالشوارع، وبشوف إنه قاعدين بيعملوا أشياء مش مطلوبة منهم، مش هم انفرضت عليهم فرض على أساس إنه يساعدوا. فبديت على عاتقي الشخصي مني شخصيا، بديت اشتري شويه الوان وورق وفراش واخليهم يرسموا من خلال مجموعات. بس يمكن من اصعب الورشات انه انا شفت اميات اجوني على الورشه انه انت شو عملت في اولادنا، انت يعني خليت اشي مختلف في سلوكهم، اشي. وانا هذا اللي بهدف له، يعني انه بدوا يتعاونوا مع بعض. هاي التفاصيل الصغيره اللي انا بتمنى انه اكون جزء في اني انا قدرت اساعد في اني انا اعدلها. نفس الامهات صاروا يطالبوا بهم بدهم، لانه هم كمان عندهم كميه من العنف والغل في داخلهم. عملت ورشه، طبعا هذه يمكن من اصعب الورشات اللي انا خضتها بحياتي كلها، انه صار الامهات يبكن وهن قاعدات برسم. من اول مره بكون انا قاعد في ورشه، بدل ما انا صرت انا نفسي بدي كمان حد يواسيني بالوضع اللي موجود فيه.
These are neither paintings nor artworks that we create for collectors or art enthusiasts to acquire or view. These are pieces of our bodies, scattered with the shrapnel at every moment of bombardment, accompanied by the most disturbing sounds emerging from the mouths of cannons and the missiles falling from the sky into our homes, causing our bodies to scatter along with them. They are our screams that emerge and hurt our throats. They are made of coal, ink, and colors shaped by our blood. They are the smiles of our children that vanished along with their schools in a time that is neither theirs. They are love lived at a time of war, and I am certain that love dispels fear. I do not paint a picture of war. Journalists can capture that with their cameras. My paintings are a longing for a kiss and an embrace. They are a light that fills our hearts. They are testaments to a genocide. They are our concerns during displacement and the anxiety of moving it from one place to another, and the fear of it as if it were a family member. Will we survive to present this work and witness you contemplate it? If I am among you, then I am brave, and if I am not, then I am a martyr in my last art residency.
This is a poem in response to my friend Mohammed Musa, who's from the Gaza Poet Society. And I met Mohammed while going there for one of my trips with the Church of Scotland. And we began exchanging poems, talking about things like line breaks and word choice. He was writing in English. And on one of those trips, we went out on one of the Gaza fishing boats. And I took a picture here that I used to use in my talks because it could be children playing anywhere in the world. But as you look at it now, it is a scene no longer possible. None of those buildings exist anymore. And even then, the harbor was full of pollution because the Gazans weren't able to fix the pipes that were used for sewage. And so the sewage was flowing directly into the sea. Muhammad has continued to write throughout this time period of genocide. And he wrote this, and I felt compelled to write back. How should I tend to my wounds? How can I rename the smoky sky that looms over the torn tent? How does one welcome life in the midst of death's roar? How can motherhood grasp eternity as dawn brings forth new martyrs? The world's thirst for my blood is unquenchable. I was not born to this slaughter. Why do soldiers ravage my father's fields, plundering even his death? Return me to my home beneath a changed sky, still etched with familiar scars. Teach me to dress my wounds so that my foes never savor victory. Mohammed, I still remember when we poets met online and then in person in Gaza. We exchanged poems the way poets do. Talked about line breaks, why you write in English. And when we met in Gaza City at the Marna Hotel with my delegation, I gave you Rilke's slim volume, Letters to a Young Poet. Seems ridiculously innocent now. Then you took me on that boat ride into the beautiful polluted harbor. That was July 2018, before I left. Then you wrote me this to make sure I remembered. Do you still remember the features of this neglected place? The smell of the overcrowded streets, the carts carry vegetables and fruits, the lost dreamers, the blueness of the beach on that July day, the small empty boats left for the misguided hopers, those little kids who were jumping in a polluted water and laughing, their looks at strangers, their smiles for newcomers, the empty cafes, the talkative cab drivers. In Gaza, many things are remarkable. Their pain is remarkable. Joy is remarkable. Sorrow is remarkable. Everything in this place is remarkable. Even those gray, packed, adjacent buildings are remarkable. Do you still remember the astonishment of believers after they knew that in this place there are no hungry bodies, but hungry souls? Yes, yes, I remember and cherish that afternoon in that remarkable place and those children diving off that blue yellow boat, showing off for us or just being themselves. Their laughter pierced the hot, humid air, reminding me of home. Muhammad, I keep these memories in a locked part of my heart so they don't get lost in all the news. New images of pain and suffering, bodies dismembered, families driven out of their homes, and children starving. I want to preserve forever what was and still is remarkable, but today the Gazan people are starving, and you write about who will tend your wounds. And I shout on paper, I will, not knowing how or with what, Habibi, brother poet. I will dress your wounds and bandages soaked in tears, but held together by a joy once shared on a hot summer afternoon with sky postcard blue and the water surprisingly cool. Your life matters. You are not meant for slaughter, but for more joy. And yes, yes, I still remember, always. As the genocide continued, there are many horrible chapters, and one of them was after the bombs and bodies were flew into the air and broke into pieces. They were given back to people in plastic bags. And this is that one of those horrible images. And this is a prayer that I was trying to write and found quite impossible. And I wonder, how can I break bread and say, this is my body broken for you, my blood poured out for you, when all I want to do is join my weeping with yours, reassemble their parts, make them come alive again. This is the resurrection I long for, the prayer that is stuck in my throat. This is a letter from a mother in Gaza to mothers all around the world. It's from Munira El Najjar and from Gazan 2025.
To every mother who wakes her children with a kiss and sleeps peacefully to the sound of their laughter. To every mother who packs a school bag or waits by the window for her child's return, I write to you from a place that no longer resembles life, a place where motherhood is entangled with prayer, where love walks hand in hand with patience, and fear is softened only by hope. A mother just like you, I dream only to see my children grow, to prepare them a meal without first counting the airstrikes, to dress them in clean clothes so they don't carry the scent of smoke, to let them sleep without asking, when will the war end? Or why us? In Gaza, we do not live. In Gaza, we wait. We wait for bread, for water, for the faint signal of safety. We wait to count our children every evening and tremble at the thought that one may be missing by dawn. Mothers of the world, we do not ask for pity, but for your witness. We do not ask for silence, but for a voice besides ours, so that your children, when they grow up, will know that we had children too, and that we had arms and hearts and fears just like you. Let the world remember that in Gaza, mothers still give birth under fire, raise children in tents, and teach them that love survives even in war. From my small tent, I write to you with the voice of every mother who endured, every mother who grieved, and for every mother that still dares to dream of peace.
This is a collage pastel of a little girl that I found online that happened about a year ago. God of today and all our tomorrows, of our joyous moments and sorrows, protect this one. Mother Mary, throw your mantle over this one in her mother's wedding dress with one shoe on and one shoe off. Remind us that in the rubble are more than dead bodies. As I continued to work through and witness the various chapters of this genocide, I decided it was also important to show the brief moments of that joy that the Gazan poets and artists are talking about. This is a collage with pastel and watercolor of Eid in Gaza. And I include a quote from one of the doctors. I spent the entire morning and afternoon cutting brand new Eid clothes off dead children. This on the right is a assemblage, which means that I actually tried to create one of the UN bags of flour. There was something called the flour massacre when bags of flour were being distributed. And when the people came to get those bags, they were shot at and killed. So that is why you see blood here. And inside the bag is a pita bread. And inside the pita bread is also a Bible, because there are many more conservative evangelical Christians who support what is happening in Gaza. And I wanted to bring that forward in the piece. And the next poem is called When Silence Starves by Ruba Khalid Al-Falid.
No food remains, only the rumble of empty stomachs, louder than bombs, more relentless than drones. Our bodies have withered to shadows, ribs jut like broken wings, as if our chests yearn to escape what we've become. Bird-boned, starving, trapped in a cage forged by war. Men falter mid-sentence, words unraveling. Women break bread into ghost-thin slivers, and the children, they no longer play. Joy demands calories they don't have. They sit in corners, limbs folded like broken vows, eyes wide yet dulled. Mothers stir empty pots, serving nothing with whispered apologies. They season it with songs, but the children are too weary to pretend. Plates stand barren. Shelves echo their emptiness. The world too feels hollow, unanswering when we cry out. We faint now, quietly, without fanfare. It's what happens when the body exhausts even the will to stand. And when the world begins to hear the growl of our hunger, they rush to drown it. Bombs roar louder to silence our stomachs. They hold meetings not to feed us, but to feed illusions. Cease fire, they say, meaning delay. Negotiation, they claim, meaning nothing. They stage hope like a play, just enough to keep us dreaming of bread, just enough to hush the world. Not peace, not aid, just silence in disguise. Yet, still, we dream. Dreaming is the last right they haven't stolen. In Gaza, a loaf of bread is no mere meal. It's a miracle, a flag, a defiant declaration that we are still here. When the world asks, what does hunger sound like? Tell them it sounds like Gaza, where even silence starves.
This is an image of the first time that the Gazans were asked to leave again. And so here they are on the right, packed up, moving to the south. On the left, you will see images from 1948, included also a small hand coming out of the rubble with a small green shoot that some considered a symbol of hope, that even out of death comes life. But this happened at least 3 times in Gaza alone. So the Nakba, the great catastrophe, was not only 1948 or 1967, but again and again, the Gazan people are forced from their homes, even now as we speak. This is another Gazan artist, Rayad Issa, and there's a small video to talk about that piece that you've just seen.
شيل شيل يا جمالي شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالهيل ليل يا ليلو ويل ويل عالظالمي ويل ويل من الله لا أسهر على نجوم الليل أنا ناديله شيل شيل يا جمالي شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالهيل ليل يا ليلو ويل ويل عالظالمي ويل ويل من الله لا أسهر على نجوم الليل أنا ناديله شيل شيل يا جمالي شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالليل يا ليلو ويل ويل عالظالمي ويل ويل من الله لا أسهر على نجوم الليل أنا ناديله شيل شيل يا جمالي شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالليل يا ليلو ويل ويل عالظالمي ويل ويل من الله لا أسهر على نجوم الليل أنا ناديله
I want to point out that the sound that you're hearing is the ongoing, ever persistent sound of the drones. And the music comes from a Gazan music teacher who continues to sing with his small group from the school. And so that is also the reality of now. So I think, I'm not sure exactly how many months it has been, perhaps even at least a half year or more. One of Gaza's doctors who wasn't killed was taken at gunpoint out of his hospital because he would not leave the patients. He worked in a pediatric hospital. This is Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. And this collage, it comes from a photograph of the last image we have of him, which is walking through the rubble in his white coat. And I imagine he is walking to the hospital where he has vowed to stay until the end. And there's a poem that I wrote called The Long Walk.
If you want to kill us while we continue working here. Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. In your white doctor's coat, you walk through the rubble, past the tanks and robots that have just dropped bouquets of bombs on your hospital, on your exhausted staff, working without medical supplies, with blown-out generators, operating under cell phone lights, taking care of and keeping alive the babies still attached to ventilators, gasping for life in a war zone, condemned by the courts, but condoned by a complicity of silence as the humming drones circle, waiting for Christmas Eve to attack your ICU. They came for you a few days later, forced you to leave at gunpoint, your babies, your hospital, rendered non-operational now. They took you to break your spirit, torture you to confess your allegiance to political powers, not believing your loyalty to your oath. Our latest picture of you is from behind, you walking uphill through the rubble on your way to work to save lives, to stay until the last Palestinian leaves Gaza, you said. So attached to life you were, to your calling, to your humanity. You challenge ours, imprisoned now for another 6 months, tempted, beaten, tortured. You remind us of the one who we are called to follow.
One of the other artists that I've gotten to know is Ahmed Muhana. He is part of a group who've been able to have their art smuggled out and taken to Europe and to the United States in a show called Gaza Stories of Hope. You'll note that on this picture that he is doing his art on one of the boxes of food rations. And we will now hear from him directly.
أنا فنان ومشاهد على الحرب، رسمت على الكراتين هذه مشاهد الألم والمعاناة. حلم من أحلام حياتي إنه يكون لي معرض خارج قطاع غزة.
Bearing Mountain is my voice, my scream, and my features in the face of everyone who tries to erase my artistic and human identity, and to prove my rights as a visual artist and a free human being who faces injustice by creation and creativity. It is also a response to the injustice that I am personally subjected to and an echo to the greatest injustice that happened to man in Gaza during their repeated displacements, a woman or man or child, regardless of gender, religion, or identity.
In the last few months, actually from the very beginning, journalists have been targeted. First, they were not allowed in, and then the Gazans became the press corps themselves, and they have been systematically shot at, bombed, and about a month and a half ago, 6 Gazan journalists were bombed in this building that you can see behind. And here, many of them are gathered. You will note that many of them are women who become journalists. And this is a poem written by a Palestinian poet, Dareen Tatur. Doreen herself was imprisoned for up to a year for writing a poem that included the words resist. Simply writing a poem that asked for and called for resistance landed her in jail. So when these journalists were killed, she felt moved to write about that. A word cannot stop a bullet.
On the night of August 10th, 6 voices that guarded the truth went out, as if the shelling had not been satisfied with Gaza's walls, but had torn down the wall of the heart. They did not leave because they were tired, nor because they fell silent, but because the world went deaf to them, leaving them to face the warplanes alone. The planes extinguished the word and the voice, yet they ignited within us the fire of betrayal and made grief too vast to speak.
They are gone, but the truth remains, trembling in my hands, asking me if I will carry it or leave it to be bombed again. Oh God, how heavy this absence is, how much this betrayal feels like a bullet from behind, when I still believed the world could hear and see. They are gone, and left us to face the bitter question: what can a word do if no one defends it? And what can a voice do if its echo has died?
But I know they are now in a place where planes cannot reach, writing from there. A story without bombardment, waiting for us to carry what is left of the tale. I, the poet who once believed the word was a fortress, and that a voice, no matter how faint, could cross the wall. But on the night of August 10th, I saw the word bombed, and the voice scattered in the air before it could arrive.
6 souls departed, 6 voices that fought with cameras and microphones, and I felt a part of me fall with them, a part that believed a poem could save a life, that a letter could stop a bullet. Today I know the road is longer and harsher, and that I now carry a trust heavier than my body, to write for them, to be the echo of their voices, to reach out for the word before it falls from the sky. Their departure did not silence me, but it made my voice hoarse, filled with the salt of tears, and more entangled in the story left unfinished. I write, not to stop the bullets, but to bear witness that they pierced them all.
This is one of Muhammad's prayers, poems about the leaving of Gaza City. The news focuses on all the people who have left. Muhammad focuses on what his loss feels when he focuses on his beloved city, Gaza City. This is the final prayer of the last lamb.
No shelter for the son of the last city, but in the frail, starved bodies of survivors, parched and pleading for death to pass by in their final land, their last prayer, their fading sun. No refuge for the moon of the final night, but in the distant prayers of the displaced, clinging to hope, to God's promised land. No place for the last city, in the last land to rise, its final prayers unanswered, its last survivors scattered, lost in God's promised land.
This is our last prayer. I grant you refuge by Hiba Abu Nada.
I grant you refuge in invocation and prayer. I bless the neighborhood and the minaret to guard them from the rocket, from the moment it is a general's command until it becomes a raid. I grant you and the little ones refuge, the little ones who change the rocket's course before it lands with their smiles.
I grant you and the little ones refuge, the little ones now asleep like chicks in a nest. They don't walk in their sleep toward dreams. They know death lurks outside the house. Their mother's tears are now doves following them, trailing behind every coffin.
I grant the Father refuge, the little one's Father who holds the house upright when it tilts after the bombs. He implores the moment of death, have mercy, Spare me a little while for their sake. I've learned to love my life. Grant them a death as beautiful as they are.
I grant you refuge from hurt and death, refuge from the glory of our siege, here in the belly of the whale. Our streets exalt God with every balm. They pray for the mosques and the houses. And every time the bombing begins in the north, our supplications rise in the south.
I grant you refuge from hurt and suffering. With words of sacred scripture, I shield the oranges from the sting of the phosphorus and the shades of cloud from the smoke. I grant you refuge in knowing that the dust will clear, and they who fell in love and died together will one day laugh.
The flotilla arrived in the waters, most of them off the coast of Gaza. But the flotilla and the call for humanitarian aid, the end of the genocide, not just the ceasefire, is our responsibility too. These two paintings on the left represent the flotilla coming into the harbor here in Belfast. First one boat, and then the whole fleet coming in. This is our collective responsibility to continue to try to end the genocide, to end the siege, to bring humanitarian aid in, and not to accept a peace plan that does not allow the Palestinians their right to their own sovereignty. On the right are the images from the exhibit that is going around Europe, Art as a Breath of Life, which is what we have, I hope, been listening to today. This is a book that is coming out, which I do encourage people to read. A Moon Will Rise from the Darkness. It features the reports of Francesca Albanese, who works for the United Nations as the rapporteur. And on the cover is a beautiful painting from Malek Matar, who is now living abroad, The Children of Gaza Dreaming. I invite all of you who have taken the time to come to this presentation to remember that the children of Gaza are still dreaming, and we have a responsibility to listen to those dreams and to work for their safety and for the end of the killing, the genocide, and the freedom for all Palestinians.